Oh, welcome, grandparents. It's such a pleasure for us to be able to share and celebrate this Grandparents' Day here at Taft today, isn't it? My name is Linda Stroh, emeritus professor, faculty scholar, author, researcher, and yet probably similar to many of you, I'm often better known today as Braden Stroh's grandma. And I love it, and I'm pretty certain that you do too. I've been the grandparent representative here at Taft for a couple of years now, and it's been an enormous pleasure. It's given me an opportunity to take just a little tiny peek behind the scenes and see some of the happenings at Taft that have allowed Taft to provide this unprecedented education to our grandchildren, both academically and personally. And it's a real pleasure to be here today to speak to all of you. As grandparents, I think we share some common goals. We most probably want to make a difference in our grandchildren's life in some way. Leave a legacy of some sort that makes a positive difference in their lives. Help them become a better person, but maybe especially to help them to learn to love and care for themselves. I suspect that we also share that we want our grandchildren to know that how we walk through this world, it matters. How we engage with family, friends, coworkers, classmates, and even strangers on the street. It matters. And one of the fortunate things that have happened to we grandparents is that our grandchildren have landed here at Taft, and it's helped us reach so many of our grandparents' goals. And thankfully, there are so many guideposts here at Taft that inspire our grandchildren to understand and know that the way they walk in this world, it matters. Perhaps throughout this day, you too have been able to observe some of those guideposts. The guideposts are in the classroom by the way our grandchildren learn to have respectful yet fruitful debate. The guideposts are on the athletic field by the way our grandchildren learn there are some things equally as important as winning that game. The way they play that game, it matters. The guideposts are in the music room, in the theater groups, in their art classes, and in their dance studios. The guideposts are in so many places here at Taft, reminding our grandchildren that the way they walk through this world, it truly matters. As we look at the world today, we realize that our grandchildren are facing many challenges. They're growing up in a time of great uncertainty and change. New technologies, global crises, and social issues that are constantly evolving. Yet Taft continues to prepare our grandchildren to be open to a life that unfolds in unexpected ways. Taft has been and will continue to be a strong presence in our grandchildren's lives, as Taft has provided a sturdy foundation for our grandchildren to build upon throughout the rest of their life. And how extraordinary that Taft recognizes the significant role that we grandparents play in the development of our grandchildren by having this Grandparents' Day today. I suspect that you too are all grateful that Taft includes us in their sense of community, and we appreciate so much that they recognize the important connections between generations. So if I might be so presumptuous to once again speak for all of you just like I did last year, I want to offer a heartfelt thank you to those of you who have put this awesome Grandparents' Day together today. A very special thank you goes to our head of school, Willy MacMullen. Willy, we thank you. A special thank goes also to the development team who have worked endless hours to make this Grandparents' Day so very perfect for all of us. Amanda, Bonnie, Lawrence, and the rest of the crew, please know that we grandparents couldn't be more thrilled to be considered part of this Taft community and are so very grateful for the opportunities that you continue to provide to keep us in the fold. So grandparents, how about if we give these Tafties a big round of applause? And now I have the very distinct pleasure of introducing our head of school, Willy MacMullen. Willy MacMullen began his life as the son of two Yale professors. He graduated from Taft in 1978 and attended Yale following his Taft graduation. As merely one testament to Willy's big heart, Willy worked at the Pike School, where he ran the wilderness and home programs for intellectually and emotionally challenged adolescents. Willy came back to Taft in 1983. He served as class dean, assistant director of college counseling, director of teaching fellowships, NEASC self-study coordinator, senior seminar co-director, dean of faculty, and dean of academic affairs. Willy, it's also impressive. What are we going to ever do without you? He says we'll be fine, but we're still uncertain, aren't we? Willy has worn many hats, both in the classroom and as coach to multiple varsity teams, including varsity soccer. And in 2001, Willy became the school's fifth head of schools. Willy and Pam have called Taft their home for nearly 40 years, raising their two sons, John and Tom, on this very campus. Those acclamations are so incredibly outstanding, Willy. Yet I'd like to depart from Willy's awesome credentials for just a moment and speak to some of those attributes that a resume often isn't able to convey. And I want to use our grandson, Braden, as just one of the many, many students whose lives you've touched in ways that they will never forget you. You show up at football games, you show up at lacrosse games, and at so many student events. You're omnipresent in these students' lives. Willy, I'd like to read for you, if I may, a text that our son Braden sent that just describes so much of what you have meant to him. But first, grandparents, I want you to think back. If you remember, in our day, if you were seen going in or out of the head of school's office, it usually wasn't a good thing. But thanks to Willy MacMullen, things are different here at Taft. So Braden wrote, Mr. Mac, he's great at always leaving his door open. He loves to have kids stop by just to chat on their way to classes. And he really cares about those kids that do stop by just to talk. He wants to make sure that we're doing well in classes, in sports, and in life in general. He's been an awesome, all-round mentor to me and to so many Taft students. He's an extraordinary head of school to us all. What a testament to you, Willy. But I want to remind you once again that I know that Braden is just one of many students of Taft who have a very similar experience and whose life you have touched in a similar way. And I wonder how many grandparents here in this room even ever spoke to their head of school, or whose head of school even knew who you were. Yet you, Willy, you've instead reached out to so many Taft students in so many ways. You've made them feel seen, you've made them feel welcomed, and you've made them feel truly cared for. And you, Willy, are the perfect role model, reminding our grandchildren that the way they walk through this world, it matters. And for that, Willy, we thank you also very much for just being you. And now, grandparents, I present to you our remarkable, our unforgettable, our extraordinary head of school, and in the vernacular of many of the students here at Taft, Mr. Mac.
Linda, those were absolutely beautiful remarks. I feel so lucky to be here, to be in the role I'm in. And there's no better job that anyone can have than to be on the main hall and have an office, and you get to have your door open and see amazing students walk by and amazing faculty members. So it has been a real privilege, and Pam and I are so lucky that we got to have this place. It is a home for us. And I hope you've had a good morning. I talked to a few of you who said, one person said she admitted that she was late to class. I said, you get 2 demerits for that. Someone else admitted that they had no idea what just had happened in class. And luckily, you're not going to be quizzed. But I hope it was fun. And I'm going to offer you some remarks because I think that, I guess to Linda's point, I really value the friendship and partnership we have with you, and I think you should get to hear my thinking about a topic, and as opposed to a 2 or 3 word welcome. So I want to offer some thoughts. The name of this talk is A Moment of History and a Place on Campus, and you'll see why in a moment. And the only other thing I'd say is at the end of my remarks, we'll immediately have a concert afterwards, and it's wonderful, collegium, followed by jazz band, and also by dance. So please stick around for that. So to help you understand the school, and some of you know it well, but some of you don't, and I want to talk about a moment in our history in a very, very specific place on the campus. And together, I think they actually tell a lot about the school. And the moment comes from what I would call Taft's Genesis story. The day Horace Taft, a young Yale graduate with a law degree and just a couple years of tutoring Latin, decided to open a school. And like all Genesis stories, it has elements of myth in it. And myths, of course, are vital. And that's how an organization or a group of people pass on the core values and beliefs. And I would argue it's how you even come to understand yourself, the foundation or Genesis myth. And so here's how the opening of school started. After graduating from Yale, Horace Taft tried his hand at law. And here you have a picture of Horace Taft, a tall, 6'5", gentle, soft-spoken man. His brother, of course, goes on to become the President of the United States. But he had tried law. He found it boring and unfulfilling. And in 1889, he went out to California to visit his Yale roommate and closest friend, a man named Sherman Thatcher. And Sherman Thatcher had literally that year just opened a school in California, which some of you may know of as the Thatcher School. And Horace Taft returned back home east with an idea that he, too, would start a school. Now, to be clear, he had no capital, he had almost no experience, but he was very lucky that a close family friend wanted to help him. And a woman named Mary Black, whose magnificent portrait, and you'll see it in a second, hangs in our choral room, she offered to rent him a house. And in this way, she figures really prominently in our story. Think of the benevolent fairy godmother who grants a wish. Here, take this house. His marketing plan was minimal. Horace recalled that I, quote, had some little leaflets printed in which I let the world know what an opportunity was open to it. I sent them around to some Yale graduates. I would give a great deal to still have one of those leaflets, but I've never been able to find one. And that detail even sounds like the stuff of legend, a written call to join a new crusade and venture, and then the mysterious words just lost to the winds of time. And that's how he found himself on move-in day in September 1890 on the porch of a modest home in Pelham Manor with a handful of students. And here's how he remembered that day. It's a funny scene. And here's the house. I've actually been on a sort of pilgrimage to the house. I wanted to see it. Many years ago, I went to Pelham to see it. And here's the opening scene. He writes, "The furniture arrived at exactly the time that the boys and their parents did. And I put both boys and parents to work opening boxes. Carpenters were at work upstairs putting up the beds. It was a most comical beginning of a school. That evening, 14 of us sat down at a table, the table we still have. And I think it's the only relic of the Pelham Manor days." And I love that picture. Taft and parents unpacking, boys dragging suitcases up the steps, carpenters nailing bunk beds, complete chaos. But notice how the table, too, seems to have a mystical feel to it, another magical element in the opening of school myth. Taft recognizes this himself. He says he still has the table, and he calls it a relic, a word with its connotations of something sacred I do not think is accidental. Whatever happened to that table, we do not know. I've often wondered where it was. He goes on and he says, there were only a total of 17 boys, all grades were represented, and there was hardly anything outside of Greek and modern languages I did not try my hand at. A headmaster at a small school is expected to do what no one else will do. We were in for a long, hard fight. We lacked nearly everything except places to eat and sleep. We had no gymnasium, no ball field, no recitation rooms, no assembly room, and it was impossible to maintain any standard of admission except that of mere good character, because I could not pay the rent, and I was obliged to take boys in all stages of preparation. This does not sound like an outstanding class that applied. He says, but he went on to say, one thing cheered me mightily. I suppose that nothing pleased me so much in my plan for a boys' school as the idea that I might be a lay preacher, that the association with boys would give me the opportunity for influencing their ideas and ideals. And they're remarkable words. It's all here. Everything the school seeks to be, everything your grandchildren are experiencing today is an echo of that distant scene, an echo of that day. Think of the description of that day. First, there's a kind of wonderful institutional humility, even a self-deprecating humor in the details. Horace Taft sounds utterly overwhelmed. Some of his students barely meet the standards. He only has 2 teachers. The campus has nothing. Comical indeed, but it's in that story that why we see Taft is still a very humble school today. I think our roots are modest. This is not a school with much ego. Second, you see the role of the headmaster clearly defined. Someone who knows the school well, who's closely connected to students and faculty, and who's going to pitch in wherever needed. Linda, I'm not sure I'm omnipresent, but I like to be present. And indeed, that's the model that I inherited from Lance Odden, who was my predecessor, and I think the finest headmaster schools have ever seen. That's where the joy is for heads of school. Third, think of the image of that table with the 14 students. And I think, by the way, the 14 is the 14 boarders. When he mentions have 17 total, I take that to mean there were maybe 3 day students. We don't know. I see that, the sitting down with 14 students, as the perfect symbol of what we are trying to do. It is everything Taft is today. A dedicated and caring teacher sitting at a table with curious and smart students where they make room for different voices, where they share and debate and learn, and where they create a caring and functioning community. We do that now with your grandchildren. It's just a much bigger table. Fourth, that reference to good character. I don't know if you noticed when he talked about admissions and the students not being prepared, he kind of slipped that phrase quietly in there. We had nothing other than merely good character. But it's there, and it's a reminder that character has always mattered a lot when we think of admitting students. And I think even more so than intellect and achievement. And that's still the ethos of our admissions office. Fifth, in saying that he feels he's a lay preacher, he sees the work as profoundly important at the heart and soul and as well as mind. Maybe there's something even sacred, something holy about this work. And the phrase influencing ideas and ideals, I think you can see him even then groping for a phrase, groping for a mission statement. And by the 1920s, he's using the phrase, the education of the whole student, which is what we talk about today. So the why of Taft is right there. Now, I've read that account of his opening days many times. Sometimes I go back for selfish reasons. I think his humor and perspective about the challenges and setbacks have fortified me on those days when I felt battered. When I thought I had it tough, I look back and say, well, look at him. But I go back more because I see Taft today in that scene. The mythical elements of that Genesis story, that lost leaflet, the unexpected gift of the house, that sacred table, the sense that the calling was noble, that shapes us still. So hope as you begin to think about and understand Taft, think of that moment in our history. Think of that opening day. That's the moment in history. But I said I'd talk about a place. So I want to quickly talk about a place. It's a really specific spot on campus, and you actually know it, but you've probably never thought about it. And it is the steps and the door that you walked through in the main entrance. Years ago, I determined, and here's that opening. Years ago, I determined we needed new doors to our main entrance. The doors were scratched and faded, and our annual repainting did nothing to hide the fact that the main doors of the main building of this extraordinarily prestigious school looked pretty tired. So I contacted a local firm with some really highly skilled craftsmen and strong ties to Taft. They came to do the measurements. They came into my office to tell me that that top stone, you can see it here, that top stone was so worn, so cupped from the years of use, that they wouldn't be able to get a weather seal. So, Mr. Mack, we're going to need to pull the stone and put a new stone in. And in one of those rare moments when I had a good idea, I said, I thought of the thousands of pairs of feet that had walked up there for over a century. And I said, no, you need to cut the wood to meet the stone. And that's what you see when you stand there and look down. You see the curved wood edge match the stone. Now, why does the place matter to me? You say, come on, of all the places on campus, why? I've spoken about this office because the day that door was installed, the English teacher in me saw in the line where the curved wood meets the cupped stone, at the junction of door and sill, I saw a metaphor. Here in the line between stone and wood was the meeting of the past and the future, tradition and innovation, the fixed and the changing. Here, I thought, is a picture of what a great school should do and where it must try to place itself, challenging though that is. And I hope this is what your grandchildren are experiencing. Now, to be clear, so let me explain. We are a school that is a school of stone, one that preserves many traditions, that is informed by our past, that is proud of the values that have stood the test of time. Take our campus. Some of the buildings are over a century old, and there's a stately gravitas to them, the solemnity of the past in stained glass windows, in arches, the brick and limestone, the glow of the main hall, and the afternoon light. We are a school that has traditions that still anchor us. We have sit-down dinners. We begin with grace. Students still pledge an academic honor pledge. We meet in this auditorium several times a week in assemblies and meetings, and seniors exit first. So we have traditions that never change. We have decades-old ceremonies and celebrations that honor who we are. The cum laude assembly, lessons and carol service at Christmas, the service of remembrance every year where we recognize alumni who have passed away, the alumni parade, commencement itself. Our curriculum has elements of stone in it, meaning it traces itself back to the liberal arts tradition that goes all the way back to Socrates, to the idea that students learn to pursue truth, to solve problems, to be open to new perspectives, to wrestle with ideas, to develop a love of learning. We have core values that are timeless. They're etched in wood and stone and glass: service, honor, respect, kindness, excellence, resilience, love. These are literally carved into our campus. So in many ways, Taft is very much that granite step. It is an unchanging school. But it would be wrong to only be that. And a school that is only that would be doomed to fail. We are also the curved wood of the door, a school that's perpetually innovating, that's always a little restless to do things differently and better, and which is constantly shaped by the world and the changes around us. Our campus itself has new spaces, and we renovate old ones, state-of-the-art facilities with modern, efficient, dynamic systems. Our traditions change, just even the sit-down dinner. We still have it, but grace may be drawn from multiple different religious systems. Our curriculum is expanded and flexed. Courses in science, technology, engineering, offering in humanities, in film, race, gender, sports. Horace Taft never would have dreamed of those. The classroom pedagogy has changed. My guess is that some of you sat in classrooms that looked different than anything you had experienced. We ask students to show their learning in different ways. We assess more creatively. Teachers are more attentive to creating a supportive learning environment. Technology's allowed spectacular advances. We attend to student mental and physical and emotional health in different, new, and supportive ways than just a few years ago. And our student body is different. It's a global one, diverse in all ways. That's why your grandchildren wanted to come to Taft. It looks nothing like those 17 boys that came to Taft in 1890. So Taft, to be clear, is also very much the wooden door, perpetually curving, always reshaping itself, constantly changing, forever improving. So I pull it together to suggest that there may be the way you can understand this school. When you think about Taft, think about that moment in history, and think about that space on campus, because I think both of those tells us a lot about who we try to be. And there's something beautiful and important in this school, humble and as imperfect as we are, something in the labor of teachers and students, something in our aspirations and dreams that makes this school, and I say this with obvious bias, but I say it nonetheless, it makes this a school that I believe this nation and maybe even our globe deeply needs. Your grandchildren are lucky to be here. We're lucky to have them. And in 30 days or 3 years, they will walk across the stage for their diploma. They will be different from the one who arrived, no longer the student who started here, changed by a school that began in that modest house in Pelham Manor on that chaotic day when they gathered around a table for a communal dinner. A school that sees everything it tries to be on that top step where the wood and the stone meet. And to all of you for the work you do and the partnership and support in helping us meet our mission and be all we try to be, I thank you so much. It has been a real privilege of mine to be in this role and every year to look out on you. So with that, and with knowing that you're about to have a great concert, I welcome you and thank you all. Okay.